Hey everyone, it's Jill the Wandering Stamper. It is August now, and hopefully the hottest month is behind us here in Colorado Springs, where we are visiting for the summer to spend some time with our kids and our grandkids. Today I wanted to come online and show you how to make this really cute slider card, and we'll be using the adorable By My Side stamp set. I fell in love with this set because it reminds me so much of my grandson and my granddaughter. They kind of look like, two of the stamps kind of look like them, and it's a lot of fun to play with. I'm going to be making them some fun little cards as well one of these days. So I also wanted to remind you the whole month of August, the kit collection for Stampin' Up! Is on sale. So it's a great time to purchase some kits ahead of time. Maybe you want to make holiday cards or just have some birthday cards or thank you cards on hand, and you don't want to buy a ton of products. These kits are fabulous because everything comes in the box that you need to create the card. You need nothing else but what's in the box, which is fabulous. All of the kits are under $25, and as I said, they're on sale all month. So check those out. I have a link on my blog to my online store, and you'll see links below for everything. I also did a video last week showing you one of the kids collection sets, so you can see how easy and fun they are to make. So check those out. Again, they are on sale all of August. So I'm going to take a moment to flip the camera down and we'll get started on this fun fold card. Okay, let's get started on this card. As I mentioned, we'll be using the By My Side Cling set. I love this set. It's got some really great sayings, and these kids are so adorable. This one reminds me of my granddaughter, Skylar, and she has the cutest pair of glasses she wears. So that just really reminded me of her. And my little stinker grandson, Sawyer, he looks so much like this little boy, and he's got such a little playful attitude. So I thought this would be a fun stamp set to play with. One little thing I love to do when I make cards, I wanted to share this with you. I don't use this really long block a whole lot. So what I'll do is pull out all the stamps I plan to use on my cards and mount them on here, so that way I can grab them as I'm stamping and not have to keep going to the box and taking them out. I do want to mention on this set, the little boy comes attached to the puppy, but I went ahead and separated them because I found that I like to use the puppy on his own for a lot of things. So don't be afraid to cut your stamps. I just cut mine off, and then just make sure you're making straight cuts if you do cut your stamps apart, so you don't have any weird edges that might hinder your ability to stamp. But I did want to point that out because what I have looks a little different than what you would purchase online. So it comes together like this. I cut mine apart so I could use them for different things. Just wanted to point that one out. So as I mentioned, we're going to be making this fun little slider card. I love this card. It is pretty simple to make, and you can decorate it all over the place. So I've decorated mine up here. There's a sweet little saying on the front, and then I created this little cute little friend down here for the card as well. So let's get started on making our card. So the first few cuts you make are pretty straightforward. We're going to start out by getting our paper trimmer out. And I already cut this piece because I wanted to get this piece done ahead of time, because I have a small table in my RV, and it's a lot for me to put my embossing and die cutting apparatus up here, because I know it's hard for you to see that when I can't get it all on the table. So I went ahead and cut it out. So this piece of paper, you want to cut your designer series paper at 4.5 inches by 5.5 inches. And then what I do is you're going to get a rectangle die, and you're going to die cut the middle. But the trick to this, and I'll share this with you, is when you cut this panel out, you want this little panel here is going to be what slides up and down. So the most important part is that you're only cutting it on 3 sides. You don't want to cut this top part. So you're probably wondering how that's done. So I take my die and I kind of tape it down. I love this tape. Lisa Curcio shared this with us as one of her craft room favorites, and I do have a link on my website for this. It's Post-it labeling and cover-up tape. I love it. I use it all the time, and I just keep the pieces sitting on my die cutting machine so I can use them over and over. But what I did is I taped my die down, and then when I got my cutting mats out, I placed it on my cutting mat. I actually hang mine slightly off my mat so that I'm sandwiching everything straight. But as you notice, I'm not putting my plate up here because I don't want to cut that part. So I sandwich it like this, and then I run it through the machine. So when you're done and you take this tape off, you'll see, and this tape is great because it won't tear the paper, it just pops off and you can use it several times. So I've cut my flap here, but it's not cut across the top. So you want to make sure that you do it that way. So I wanted to give you that little tip, but I didn't want to go through the whole process because that I know is time consuming for you to watch, and it's hard for me on my little tiny RV table. So I wanted to share that with you. So once you have that 4.5 by 5.5 sheet cut, you're also going to want to cut a piece for the back. Again, that's the same size, 4.5 by 5.5. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this 4.5 by 5.5. So these two pieces are the same size. And then you're going to want to cut your slide out piece, which is going to be 4 3/4 by 3 1/8. Actually might have one cut. Yeah, 3 1/8 by 4 3/4. So that one's already cut out. I love it when I find some scraps that I've already cut out. So 3 1/8 inch by 4.5. And that, I'm sorry, 3 1/8 inch, excuse me, by 4 3/4. I will have all the cutting and scoring dimensions on my blog, so just check out that link. So that's going to be for the slider part in the middle. And then you're going to want a little piece of cardstock for the mat, and I'm going to go ahead and stick with my color coordination. And I was hoping I would have a scrap. Let's see. It does not look like I have any scraps, so we're going to go ahead and cut a piece. So this is Berry Burst, and it coordinates, of course, with this Designer Series paper. By the way, this Designer Series paper comes from the Glorious Gingham Designer Series paper pack. I love this pack of paper. It's really got some great colors. It's got Berry Burst, Blueberry Bushel, Lemon Lime Twist, Pecan Pie, and Pretty Peacock. And there's two sides, of course. One side has a large plaid pattern and the other one has a small checked pattern. So we're going to be cutting our mat at 3.5 by 2.5. So 3.5 by 2.5. Of course, you can make this any color you want. And then you want to have a piece of white cardstock to stamp on the front. And that piece is going to be 3 1/4 by 2 1/4. So that will layer on there nicely like that. So that's it. So I'm going to set this aside. Oh, actually, we have one more step with that. Before I set that aside, you're going to want to take this piece of Designer Series paper. After you have cut out your rectangle on 3 sides, you're going to want to do some scoring. And that's how we're going to create all the folds for it. So it's going to be scored at 1 1/4. And what you want to do is place it at 1 1/4 and then place your scoring blade just on the part that's cut out. So I'm going to score from here to here. Okay? Then you're going to move it up to 2 7/8. Do the same thing. And then the last one is at 4 1/2, which will be where the top of your cutout would have been, but remember we didn't score it on that edge. We only cut 3 sides. We're only scoring on the top edge. So you've got a score line here, a score line here, and a score line here. All right, now we're done with the cutter. So, and then if you didn't cut quite up to your score line, just take your scissors. I actually did, which is amazing. I think that's the first time that's ever happened. Just cut it up to the top of your score line. So once that's scored, you're gonna go ahead and fold it, and then fold it down and fold it up. Easy, easy. And that creates the pop-up for the slider. So while I have that folded, I'm gonna go ahead and get my tear and tape, and I'm gonna put a piece of tear and tape along this edge, and that's gonna attach to your slide out piece. I love tear and tape. It's really easy to work with. It's just like its name. Just stick your fingernail where you want to tear and it pops right off. So I put that piece there, and then go ahead and open it up. And then your white piece that's going to be your slider piece, it's going to slide up and down. That piece is going to go here like this. So what I'll do is take your pick tool and pull this little tab up, and then center it as best you can. Go ahead and center this piece, and you want it to be lined up with the top edge of the paper. And then just push it down, and it's going to attach to that piece of tear and tape. So it looks like this, and then it will pull up like this. But it's important to do that first, because the next part we're gonna do is we're going to, the way I like to do this is I put my tear and tape now on, where did I put, here it is. Put my tear and tape on two edges like this. You're gonna eventually do all three sides, but I'm gonna show you why I do the sides first and not the bottom. You don't want to be too close to this cardstock because you don't want it to get caught on that. But I'll put that there, and then I grab that, remember that extra piece that we had over here? We'll go ahead and fold this like this, and then I just like to make sure everything matches. Now you could go ahead and unstick that tear and tape and just use some glue here, but actually you don't really have to put the tear and tape on there first if you don't want to. I don't know why I do, I just do. So you would go ahead here, line it up, and then center with, you want to cut a circle. So this is probably a 1.25 inch circle, and I'll go ahead and cut it right there in the middle, okay? But before I do that, I did do something different with this card. I'm gonna be using alcohol-based markers to stamp on this piece, and as you know, that's going to bleed through on the back. So what I do is I'll cut one extra piece of paper to cover that up later, because it's kind of messy and I want to be able to use the back to write a message. So let me grab a piece of scrap. Remember, that was 5.5 by 4.5. So I'm just cutting an extra piece. Let's see if I have 5.5. I do, so 4.5. So I'm just cutting one extra piece to sandwich back here, and that's because I want to be able to cover up where my alcohol-based marker ink is going to bleed through. So that I have those three, I'm going to go ahead and sandwich those together because I want to cut all three layers. So you just center it as good as you can. Cut that out. So that's going to be where your pull tab will eventually go. All right, so now that we have that on there, you can go ahead and flip this back up because it won't be in the way. And as you can see now, you've got your tab here, and it's not cut out. You don't want to cut that piece, okay? So we'll go back to the tear and tape, and I'm going to add one more piece down here. So you need to have the tear and tape on 3 sides. Like that. And you don't have to do this ahead of time. I don't know why I always do it that way, but it's really not necessary. Do it however you like, as long as you give yourself a chance to punch out that tab before you glue the sides together. Because believe me, I've forgotten to do that. And then you've got to, it's doable, but you've got to, you know, pull this out and move it around. It's kind of hard. So, all right. So that is done. So now I'm going to flip this over and make sure I have the right side here. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to flip this over, and then as best as I can, I'm going to, actually a lot of the time I will just do it. Let me make sure I didn't flip my paper over. A lot of the time I will just hold it like this and put it together. That usually works for me. Of course it didn't work today because I'm showing it to you, but that's okay, we've got it on there. So if you end up with it not being quite lined up, don't worry. You can take your scissors and just give it a little trim. It's not a big deal. Nobody will know. So there, perfect. I really didn't do this straight at all, but it's okay. Cards can be fixed. They're your cards. You're usually the only one who will ever know. All right, now I'm not going to attach this until later, just because I want to make sure I don't have any bleed through on this piece. So I'm gonna set this aside for later. And now we're gonna go ahead and work on the other pieces. So for this little cute card, grab a piece of scrap paper. We're going to grab our little boy here. And I'm using Memento ink. You always want to use Memento ink if you're going to, I'm going to use a bigger block for him. You always want to use Memento ink if you're going to be coloring in with alcohol-based markers, because it will not bleed into the marker color. So I am going to ink it this way. I bought a new Memento ink pad. I'm waiting for it to come in. This one I have re-inked so many times that it sometimes just inks too much in places. So I'm gonna put him right here. Okay, stamp off. I like to stamp off when I use Memento ink just to not muddy up my stamp pad quite so much. And then I'm gonna grab the little puppy dog. And remember, this is normally attached to him, but I separated mine, so it's a little different. I just wanted to be able to use that puppy without masking the boy off of him. All right, we'll put him here. Okay. And then I've decided you could just do your greeting, which mine says, "Hi, sweet friend." You could just stamp it here if you like, or you can bring a little extra elevation to it and just stamp it on a piece of scrap paper. I have some scraps right here, so I think I'm gonna stamp on this, and then I'm gonna layer it with some Berry Burst paper. Okay, that was hard to do without putting my head in your camera, so I'm glad it came out pretty straight. So what I'll do is just take my scissors and give it a little trim like that. And I just want to make it a little bit smaller. And then I'll get a piece of scrap. Now, I could use dimensions, or I could just glue it right onto the paper. Either way works. So I think I'm going to glue it onto the paper and then put dimensionals behind the paper. I'm just going to use a little bit of Stamp and Seal. I love it because if I go a little crazy, I can just bend those little tabs back. So I end up using it the most. I like the flexibility of it. And then I'm just going to layer this on the Berry Burst scraps that I have. Get a little tab there. And you can always give this a trim if you need to. Okay. Nothing fancy about this. And then just take your scissors and I just trim a little edge around it. You could be very meticulous and use your paper cutter and make an exact square, but I think this looks cute. So that's done. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my dimensionals and put a few on the back. This is big enough for these big ones, but you could also use the mini ones if you used a smaller scrap of paper. Just gonna use 3. This take your pick tool is priceless to me. It makes things so much easier. All right, so I'm gonna put him here. Now, one great thing about the silicone craft sheet is things won't stick permanently to him. So I'm actually gonna put that there and set it off to the side because just in case I mess up my coloring, I don't have to recreate that saying because you know how it is. Sometimes you just don't like what you did and you gotta do it again. So I'm grabbing my alcohol-based markers. I have some crumb cake, some pecan pie, let's start out with the pecan pie. I decided I like the puppy in pecan pie. It's a lighter brown and it works really good. So these alcohol-based markers have a fine tip and a brush tip. I'm gonna use the fine tip because there's some little spots here like his tail and his feet, and I don't wanna get outside the lines. It's not that big of a deal because I have a color lifter, but I don't like to mess up. So a lot of time I will just outline him a little and then I'll just go in and color him in. Now, if this was a big piece, I would go ahead and use my brush tip and get this done a lot faster, but he's kind of small. What I love about these alcohol-based markers is that you don't get streaks when you go over things more than once like you would with a regular marker. I've actually quit using all my other markers because I love these so much. So he is done. You got to give the alcohol a couple of minutes. I just dropped my lid. Let's see if I can get it. Give him a couple of seconds actually to dry out. The alcohol will evaporate and then you get that nice smooth finish. So I'm going to set him aside for a minute and go to the crumb cake. And we're going to use crumb cake to color in the little boy's hair. I've just ordered a new crumb cake marker because I have annihilated this one. The brush tip does not work. So we are using the finer tip of this one until I get my new marker in. I used this to make about 100 cards for someone, and I used this marker so much that I wore out the tip. It did not run out of ink though. I can tell you they last a long time. Okay, so there's his hair. And then we're gonna do his shirt in Daffodil Delight. So I start out with the light. I'm gonna use the brush tip for this. And these markers color coordinate with everything, the papers and the designer series, everything. So that's why I love them so much. And then I'm using light Blueberry Bushel to do his little shorts. And I think he's gonna have blue shoes as well. He's so cute. Okay, now that I've given this little bit of time to dry. So I'm gonna go back through with dark crumb cake, and I'm gonna go over some of the details in his hair. I do my colors kind of in steps. Some people will do all of the yellow and then go in and then do all, you know, do one color at a time. I just kind of go through and do all my light, because then I've given it time to dry, and then I'll go through and do all my dark. So now I'm doing the dark Daffodil Delight. I'm not gonna really do anything with his shorts, but I am gonna go in with the dark Pecan Pie and darken his nose and maybe his back leg there. That's good. So now that I've given it a second to dry, I'll go back over, oh, there's that end that doesn't work. I'll go back over with the light color, and what it does is it blends it all together so you don't have any harsh lines. Once the alcohol's dried, you'll see you don't have any harsh lines, so it just really makes you look like a pro when you're coloring things in. It just gives it a little bit of depth. So that's done. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with this shirt. I'm just going back over the area that I put the dark with the light marker, and it just kind of blends it together so it just looks like shading. And then one little trick I learned is they sell a color lifter. This is typically to take color, if you get color outside the line, you could use it to lift it. But I found that if I use it lightly on his skin, he doesn't look the same exact shade as the paper. So it just kind of makes him, he's still white, but he's not quite as white as the paper. So it just gives him a little bit of dimension. So just a little tip, if you have that marker, you could even use a little bit of crumb cake and put it around the edges of his face and pull it in with the color lifter. That works too. It just makes him look like he has a little bit more color. So he's done. So then I'm gonna go back over to my mat where I have this piece and pop it on there like that. So that's done. So now I'm gonna get my adhesive. See how it bled? That's what it's gonna do on the other piece as well, which is why I wanted to add that extra layer of paper. This doesn't matter because we are putting it right here. So we're just gonna lay this on here like that. That piece is done. It's gonna go right here, but before we do that, I'm gonna go ahead and do some stamping here. Now there's a couple ways you could do this. I could have used a pencil and made some lines, and then before I attached all this together, done my stamping and then erase the lines. You can do it that way. Or if you're feeling brave, you can just go ahead and stamp right on, and you can always use a piece of a mask around it. You can put some scraps, I don't have any in front of me. You can put some scraps around where you're stamping so you don't stamp onto your paper. So I'm gonna be brave and just use these the way they are. So do I have another block? We're gonna use this block, I think. Oh, here it is. Use this block. So I'm gonna use the little girl now. She's so cute with her little bird friend. And if you didn't want to use the bird, you could just mask. You could just put a little mask over where the bird is when you're stamping and leave the bird out. You could use a little bit of that Post-it tape and cover it up if you wanted to. It'd be just fine. So I'm gonna put her right here. Okay, she's so cute. And then I want to put a little saying above her, and I'm going to put it kind of close. I don't want it too far away from her. I am missing a stamp block. I know I had another stamp block out. Oh, here it is. Too many things on my table. I'm telling you, that's the only drawback of stamping in an RV is your RV's table's little. And I could bring out my folding table, but then I'm cramping my husband, so this works for me. If I was stamping with a friend, it would not work, but it works okay for me. All right, as I said, my stamp pad is pooling a little because It's just getting past its prime. And these stamp pads are only $6.50, so sometimes it's just better just to order a new one. All right, I'm gonna put that right here. Nice to have you by my side. All right, our stamping is done. So now we're gonna color her in. So I think I'm gonna give her blonde hair. So I'm going to grab my light Daffodil Delight because I wanna keep using the same color family. So we're gonna color her hair in. This marker is brand new, so it's pretty juicy, so I'm just being extra careful. And I'm going to give her a little time to dry, and then we'll go ahead and add some details to her hair. In the meantime, I'm going to grab, I think I'm going to grab some light blue for the bird because I feel like he will be lost with the dark blueberry or the light blueberry bushels. So I'm going to use a light balmy blue and make him a bluebird. He would look cute in red too. But since we're using berry burst paper, I felt like red would clash a little. So we're going to make a blue. Blue goes good with berries. Pull out the dark. And then I'm going to make her dress berry burst because I want to keep making sure that I pull in all the colors that I'm using. So this is the light berry burst. And it's pretty big, so I'm using the brush tip. And this is a brand new marker as well. I just bought a bunch of brand new markers. Mine were getting a little worn. See, if I were to scribble my color on with a regular marker, you would see all kind of lines. That's what I love about these. You don't see those lines. All right. Her hair is dry. The bird seems pretty dry. So I'm going to go ahead and go back over the bird. I'm going to do dark where his little wings are. And give it a second to evaporate. And then I'm going to go through her hair again with the dark and just add a little detail. And I just use the lines that are in here. Maybe we'll do a little up here. And then, of course, also her dress with the dark berry burst. Just go over these little dots, or these little slashes. Okay. And I think I'm going to give her leotards. I think she needs little stockings instead of her little white legs. I think she's going to have, my granddaughter loves leotards, so that's how we're going to do those. All right, that's had a second to dry, so we're going to go back over the hair just to even out those lines. And we're going to do the same with her dress. You just see the subtle darkness of the darker shade, but the lighter shade evens it all out so it looks smooth. And then we'll go ahead and just do it a little bit for the bird. Gives it just a little more dimension. Okay. And then for her glasses, because I want her glasses to kind of look a little different, I'm going to go ahead and use this here. It just makes the glasses stand out a little bit more. All right, that is done. So I'm going to move these out of the way. And then the last thing I want to do is add a little saying up here. And I'm going to add the life is better with friends like you, which I don't believe I pulled out. Here we go. This would also look really pretty stamped in Berry Burst. You could totally do that if you wanted to. So I'm going to put that about right here. And then remember that puppy. We're going to put him here and spotlight him. And see, I did this before with him attached to the little boy, and I had to mask the boy. So by not having that to mask, it's a lot quicker for me to do that. So I'm gonna give that a second to dry, and then we're gonna color him in again in Pecan Pie. Put him upside down. And I'm using the lighter shade. Switch over to the brush. Okay. So cute. And he really doesn't need anything else. I could go over him again and do some shading, but for the sake of time, we aren't going to worry about it. So that's done. And then the last thing I want to do is, I love Wink of Stella, and I'm going to give her dress some shimmer with Wink of Stella. I have the clear Wink of Stella, so when you paint over, a little dry. When you paint over things with this, it adds a little shimmer, and I felt like she needed a little bit of shimmer. So we're gonna do her dress, and then I think I'll do his shirt as well. Just gives it a little sheen, and it just adds a little dimension. All right, so that is done. So now we're going to put the last of it together. So remember how I said this is going to bleed through? So we're going to go ahead and grab that extra piece that we cut. Make sure it matches up. And we're going to go ahead and tape this down. So I'm just going to use Stampin' Seal Plus. The first card I made, I flipped it over when I was all done and realized, ugh, that doesn't look very good. So just add yourself, if you use the alcohol markers, just add another piece on the back, and you could totally do designer series paper if you wanted to. That would look really nice as well. And you could actually put a small sentiment and do your writing here if you didn't want to do your writing in the back, but I wanted to do my writing in the back, so that's how I did it. All right, so now we want to attach this piece. So I'm just going to add some adhesive on that second panel. You want to stay below your score line here, or stay above your score line here and stay below your score line here. And then once you have that on there, just kind of center it above that first score line as best you can and press down. So now that's how he works. So now we need to work on the top. So I love this Crop-A-Dile. If you have a small hole punch, you can use that. I love this Crop-A-Dile because I can set how deep I want the hole, and if I'm making several cards, I have everything set up already. So this one's set up here for the depth I want, and so I'm just going to center that and punch it out. And then I'll add a little piece of ribbon. Of course, I didn't grab my ribbon. Let's see. We're gonna take the ribbon off the other one so I can show you how to do that. So you just want to get a coordinating piece of ribbon, a few, long enough to make your tab. And a little trick is if you go in the front, then when you pull the ends through, you'll always have the pretty part in the front, like that. And then just even it out. So there's your pull tab. Look how cute. So adorable. And that's all there is to it. It's really not hard. The hardest thing is probably creating the little rectangle in the middle. And once you know how you're going to do it, it's not hard. So there it is when it's opened. We've got a saying up here, a saying down here, and it will display on the counter open like that. So it doesn't have a way to stand, but it doesn't need to because it will stand just like that. Look how cute. So let me show you the other samples that I made. So that's the one we just created. Here's one using the He's the Man and He's All That set. I hardly did any stamping on this card. This is designer series paper, and I used the little punch outs that come with the He's All That paper. I used some rhinestone embellishments. I popped in some dimensionals to give it depth. This is one of the punch outs, so I created my tab with that. Look how cute. I used the punch out van, and then I stamped Every Day with You is Another Adventure. So super cute, minimal stamping, but quite a wow factor, and everything kind of coordinated together. So that's the second one. And then this one came from the, what is it called? Wait a second, I'm gonna have to get up and look. It's sitting right out of my reach. Timeless Arrangements. Whew, I could not remember. Timeless Arrangements stamp set. I used some scrap paper, designer series paper that unfortunately has been retired, but it looks so pretty. I've used Bubble Bath, I've used Fresh Freesia, I've used Crushed Curry, lots of different colors, Old Olive, Mossy Meadow, and created this cluster. I love this stamp set because it comes with all the dies to create these flower clusters. So it's super simple. You just cut them out and then just layer them. And then it comes with this little die here. So I did some stamping, attached that to my other pieces that I cut behind it, and then layered it with designer series paper instead of white cardstock. And then when you open it up, it says "You are so kind." And I did some stamping to match the flowers up there, and I left this blank so I could write up here, or I could write on the back. Either way is perfect. So there's my 3 cards. So we've got 3 options, a fun fold that you'll enjoy making again and again, and you can give it any look you want. I will have a link below to my website, which also has my online store and my blog with all of my cutting dimensions, videos, everything you need to create these cards. And I'd love to know what you think about them, and I hope you enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more of these videos. I post them every Wednesday, and then a few extra little videos here and there in between, but look for a new video every Wednesday with fun fold or some type of card creation that you will love to make. I'm Jill the Wandering Stamper. I hope you have a wonderful day and get a chance to do some crafting of your own. Thank you.